This episode is sponsored in part by PTZOptics. Why hire a camera operator when the control is in your hands? Visit PTZOptics.com for more information. And by NewTek, makers of the TriCaster TC1. Stun your viewers, not your accountant. Visit newtek.com for more information.
Well, hello, everybody. It's been a minute since we've been able to be back with you guys here for Salt Talk. We've got an exciting show with an exciting guest. We've had the pleasure of speaking with him behind the scenes for the last half hour. He's got a story for you guys, let me tell you. But before we do that, we've got my banged up partner in crime with me here, Mr. Greg Terry. Welcome.
Thank you, buddy. Nice to see you, Stephen. And as always, thankful to PTZOptics for caring for the worship community. Going to be a great time. We've already been in the green room with our guest Ryan, and this is going to be a fantastic hour. So welcome, everyone.
Looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun. We got Tom Willis in the chat room. Why don't you go through real quick? Say hi to the folks in the chat room.
Coming in from the suburbs, folks, of beautiful downtown, real town, Alabama. That would be versus fake town, Alabama. And I know that's spelled differently. Dave, oh my goodness, Dave, I am sorry. I'm going to go Janusz, Appleton, Wisconsin. Robert J. Gray, Detroit, Michigan, preferring to be called Bob. Now Tom, referring to Dave. Appleton, I lived in Whitefish Bay and Stoughton for a while. And then ChurchSetup. Is this where we learn where to place the pews? Yes, we're going to be putting pews in the proper order so that the gospel can flow freely to the parishioners.
Well, that's what I was a little nervous because I know we've done a show before on church setups, but our guest, he has a lot of experience in that world. But before we do that, before we introduce Ryan here, today you're getting a double dose of PTZOptics today. You guys ought to be excited. Today is our partner demo. Paul Richards and Tess Protesto will be live at 2 p.m. Eastern to bring you all the latest and greatest of PTZOptics goodness. And I, for one, I just received my Studio Pro. Greg, I know you popped by and
yes,
you got yours, and I'm really excited to check this out. If you guys haven't checked this out, YouTube Shorts, here I come.
Yeah, and I've been checking mine out, and it's fantastic. I will actually be converting it. So Stephen asked me when we were in the green room, are you running the new camera? We'll try that bokeh effect behind you. I said, Stephen, I never try a new camera on a live. I'll do it on a recorded video. So I actually have a review coming out on that. This camera is phenomenal.
He's just chicken.
I am chicken, but I'm streaming and there's no problems.
That's it. So without further ado, we want to introduce to you the founder, CEO, the man, the myth, the legend, Ryan Scott from ChurchSetup.com. Welcome, sir.
I am very glad to be here. Hello, everybody. And I'm excited to talk about the alignment of the pews as well.
Yes.
You love our comedians that we have in the chat room?
Yes. Yes.
Tom Willis, you can always count on him for some kind of short in the tooth comedy, right?
Well, that's a lesser known church growth hack is pew placement.
Yes.
Very few people know that.
Well, if you place them close enough together, once they get in, they can't leave.
They can't
That's
leave.
true.
Yep.
You know, it's
that's the way it goes. So Ryan, for those that may not know, I'm going to pull up your website here in a few seconds. Why don't you give everybody a little intro into your background and how you got started in all this madness that we call video production in the church?
Well, like they say, the hard times kind of, when you go through rough times, it breeds innovation. I am, sorry, I'm also dealing with a little bit of a cold, so hopefully I don't cough too much. But we are church planters in Seattle. We've been here for 9 years, and my wife and I, we got here, and God has done amazing things. We started, no big partners, nothing. It was just me and my wife. We got here. We started without even really knowing what we're doing. We just decided to start a church because we felt like God was calling us to do that. And 9 years ago, we had our first service, and God's been doing good things for us ever since. But then once we hit the rough area of COVID, um, my background, I was a CMO for a marketing agency for a long time. I've always been kind of a tech nerd when it comes to video and all of that. And once COVID hit, one of the things that we saw was we kept getting questions from people. I need to know how to live stream, because suddenly all of the churches in America, all the churches in the world really overnight became televangelist. So even churches that were very much against live streaming, against using video, once that hit, they really didn't have a choice in most cases. So we were getting tons of people trying to get us to come, trying to get us to help them set up. And so that's where the idea for ChurchSetup came into play. We started building kits. So it's like everything in a box. You take it out, you plug it in. And that's kind of where ChurchSetup began, was providing that for people, because, a lot of churches, there's 5,000 different cameras, products. There's 10 million different combinations of those products. And knowing the compatibility, knowing what works and what doesn't, that was a big problem that people were having. So we started ChurchSetup back then. We've been going for about 3 years now. And God's been really good to us through that. It's funding our church. It's funding, our paying our bills, and God's been really good through it. But one of the exciting things about being here on Salt Talk is that PTZOptics is by far my favorite and by far the biggest seller that we have for churches. And so we're excited to be here.
Awesome. We want to give a shout out right now. I see Jeff Adams over there on Facebook. Sorry, the comments for whatever reason aren't working with Facebook. But Ryan, getting into this, with you still talk about packages. That's one of the biggest things I think I see with churches that have been. You mentioned they've been anti live streaming for so long, right? And then you give them a package. That's what they want. They want a one-stop shop. They can get everything, take it home, plug it in, and be on their way. And looking at your website, I mean, that's essentially what you're doing.
Yeah, because like the first thing, like the biggest challenges that we see that churches have when it comes to starting live streaming or even upgrading their live stream, there's kind of two prongs to this. The first thing is there's a lack of technical knowledge in a lot of churches as to what we need. And so, like I said, there's tons of different combinations of products out there. You don't know what works with what.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side is that they're kind of at the mercy of the local integrators. A lot of times because of that lack of knowledge, they call somebody local, they come in, and these guys are really interested or used to, dealing in concert halls and things and just throwing money at stuff. And so they come in, and the company will be like, here's a 3-camera setup. We're going to install it for you and charge you $50,000. And they're just like, we can't afford that. And so with the package deal, what it allows them to do is kind of bypass that, and they can get everything they need and then install it very easily without having to be at the mercy of the local people that, I don't think they're overcharging, but they are, for what a lot of churches get. And so putting that all together where it's just like open the box, plug things in, and you're ready to go. It's much easier for churches.
And Greg,
I applaud you for that, Ryan. It's similar to what I've done.
I was just going to say, yeah.
I have developed into a PTZOptics ambassador, and there are reasons for that. A, they are good people, and I don't want to start calling names. I know and have met a lot of these people through Stephen, but A, they care. They care not only about the community, but they care about the church world. And it is a priority for them, churches, education. So that tells you all you need to know about the DNA of the company. Now, for me, I'm a missionary. I'm doing a lot of work in Ukraine right now. So I guess that would be a missionary/war correspondent. I'm an evangelist. I'm a worship leader, and I travel all over the world. And I have personally been able to help churches in a very similar manner. I'm there speaking for a weekend, and they come. The pastor will come to me, or the church leaders will come to me and say, hey, Greg, how do you do that YouTube thing? Because we need to fix our church.
Right.
Well, the advantage to that is, just like you were saying, well, this guy we called in town and it's going to be $37,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I said, don't call him back, please.
Yeah.
I said, let me help you. And they'll say, well, could you stay a couple extra days and let's take care of it?
Yeah.
And we arrange it, or I come back and maybe do a ministry weekend. And then Monday and Tuesday, we're doing some technical work and I put in the system they need. So it's always PTZOptics cameras. They work.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. And they're easy to use. The new software for the back end of camera control it's phenomenal. The Move series of cameras, awesome.
Yes.
And then I run simple things such as, maybe a vMix setup. I try to stay away from OBS. I try to stay with something that I don't want to call myself an expert on vMix, but at least master level of vMix. So these churches are my friends. This is not my business. I'm a preacher. They call me back and say, Greg, the input's not working. I know how to help them.
Yeah.
So we try to fit something to a church, because that's the call of the gospel, not to fleece the flock, but to truly help them share the gospel. So I applaud you for that. I have a question. When you are dealing with a package like that and church A gives you a buzz and says, hey, we see this looks great for us. What happens with install and service? Are there instruction guides? How do you handle that?
So what we looked at is we looked at the big challenges that churches face when it comes to implementing something like this. And then we try to, with the kits, we try to address all of those challenges and either remove them or make them easy to overcome. And so one of the things that we do for our customers, which, you don't get from Amazon or B&H or anything like that, but we give all of our customers a year of what we call premium tech support, which is jumping on Zoom. And we don't outsource that either. It's, a lot of times I'm the one on the call, but that's one of the reasons we love PTZOptics the most, is that not because the cameras are good quality and the image is good quality, but the ability for us to configure and program everything remotely is so easy with PTZOptics. It's not the same with, I'm not going to trash other brands, but it's not the same with other brands. What we do is we'll jump on Zoom with a church that, bought a kit, they get it out. If they plug everything in, we can actually jump on Zoom. Zoom allows us to take remote control of their computer, and then we can do just about everything like we were in the room with them, and configure everything, even like the exposure,
Beautiful.
But PTZOptics makes that so easy. And so that's what we do. They get it. We give them diagrams. We give them, it's like we can set up a 4-camera PTZOptics setup in like 10 minutes. If that doesn't include routing the cables through like a ceiling or a wall or something. And so that's what I tell them. The hardest part of setting up one of these kits is routing those cables. Once you get that done and plug everything in, you don't even have to do anything. Just schedule an appointment with us and we'll do it all remotely. But most people don't even end up needing that, because with the software.
Oh, hopefully he didn't have a hiccup on his end.
I hope Seattle is still there.
We'll work on trying to get it back.
I will tell you this, what I'm liking so far, I'm hearing a lot, and I applaud him. It was leading me to my next question. Because we're talking about church setup, and that was going to be, how does he deal with the audio remotely?
Well, let's ask him.
Yeah,
Ryan,
we are.
I think you hit the hang up button, I think.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but it just said I was off air for a second.
No, you're good. You're back. And so go ahead and finish your thought, because Greg has a follow-up.
Sure. So that's one of the things we do. If they can route the cable and they can plug everything in the right way, which we give a diagram for that, we can do everything remotely. But what we found is that most people with a few instructions, it's so easy to set up with the PTZOptics software that they don't even need our help. But we try to step in and provide it if they need it.
Well, the beauty of having cable routed now is, moving to PoE cameras, which I'm a stand on the mountaintop guy and shout, they're the best way to go. But so here comes my next question for you. Talking church setup. What do you then do with audio? Video's one thing, audio's king. So are there any ways that you offer advice or you give suggestions for the integration of audio for their stream?
That's a really good question, because audio is kind of the demon of the church world, in person and in streaming. The most hated person in the church is often the sound guy. And they catch all the flack and none of the praise usually. But most of our kits are built on using like the ATEM Mini Pro. And so what we try to help people is, if they have a subgroup out from their mixer, and most modern mixers do either monitor out or something like that. We provide the adapters and cables for them to get it into the ATEM. And then we try to help them to mix that audio before it ever gets to the ATEM, so that the live stream audio is separate from the house audio. That's one of the main things that we see. Churches that don't have a lot of experienced audio technicians, they'll run it from they adjust something for the live stream and it changes what's in the house. But we try to help them to bypass that and do a subgroup out for their live stream. And one of the, it's so simple, it sounds so simple, but one of the things that makes live stream sound so much better is simply turning on some reverb. You can have, I see large churches sometimes with amazing sound systems, and in person it sounds great, but on the live stream it is so dry and awful that just a little bit of ambient reverb helps so much.
Well, I'll throw some, we'll get to that question in just a second. I'll throw out another tidbit for people now. If you want that real sound in your church, and this is complementing what Ryan is saying here, but if you want that live sound that your church is just not in a can, and it's, as Ryan was saying, it's not so dry, I highly recommend, you have the room on your board, 2 or 3 channels of ambient microphones located throughout the sanctuary, hanging or hidden in strategic locations to give you that sanctuary sound. And you just mix it back a little bit, and now you're singing your song, and you hear from the congregation an amen, and you go, hold on, I think I just heard somebody saying amen. It takes it from sterile to really a lot of life,
instead of a studio sound.
Yeah.
You actually see that with live, I don't think we said this on air, but my wife is a recording artist, and she's been on a lot of live worship albums. And one of the things that the sound engineers do, they do mic the room. Because you have a song with a lot of momentum and a lot of worship, and in the room when they're doing this live, there's a lot of excitement that happens. And if you do not have that, when you listen to the song can be more flat when you're just listening to it in your car. So they mic the room so that they can get that audience, that spontaneous audience reaction captured in the moment, and it makes the song kind of carry that feeling even when you're listening to it 2 years later in your car. It's the same with the live stream. What I always tell everybody is, the live stream, you don't want them to feel like they're watching a TV show. The live stream needs to be the next best thing to being there, and they need to feel like they're in the room, if at all possible.
That immersive.
And you can have an 8K Komodo camera from Red, and if your sound is horrible, they're not going to watch it. So
well, and we got a good group in here watching today, so not only technically with good cameras and audio, but another way to keep your online audience engaged is to reference them, make them feel as if they are a part. You were talking about the sound engineer or the demons in sound. We really make it a habit at our ministry, and I would highly recommend for you guys that are watching, that are worship leaders or pastors, acknowledge your technical department, acknowledge your worship team, acknowledge your Sunday school teachers, acknowledge your online viewers. Excuse me. A simple online acknowledgement or a simple in-the-house acknowledgement goes a long way for people feeling valued and cared about.
Well, even here, like we have this question, I have it pulled up here from Tom Willis. You made mention as you guys were talking, like, hey, we're going to get to that question. So, you're engaging that audience, and I want to dive into that, what you guys do a little bit for audio, because a lot of our audience, that's a hiccup. Video is one animal, audio is another animal. Greg and I have given tips and stuff throughout the episodes here, but I'm kind of curious to see how you guys handle it and see if there's any crossover here, because we can't drive that point home enough. And Tom says, are you finding, Ryan, with churches that are having trouble getting people to run this sort of equipment? That's a great question.
Yeah, so that kind of is where the rubber meets the road, is who's going to be running the equipment. I actually just had a call with a guy I think yesterday, where we were showing them different things, and we showed them the ATEM Mini Pro, and they were kind of excited about it. We showed him the ATEM Extreme, and he said that looks terrifying because it's just a whole bank of buttons. And so there's a real intimidation factor of people that don't have experience, and they look at that and they think, I'm going to have to learn what all these buttons do, not realizing that most people, even the most experienced, ignore 99% of those buttons. And so what we have found is that for churches that have people that are willing, that are not completely technically illiterate, there are some people out, sadly, I'm related to some that don't know how to plug in a computer, right? Let alone turn it on. Those people are not the greatest people to have in the sound booth or the video booth. But anyone that has an affinity for technology, you can figure this out, and you can get really good at it in a very short amount of time and compress that learning curve. So one of the things that we've done to kind of address that challenge, because it's very real, is that with the technical support that we give our customers, we also give them a year's worth of training sessions. So we can bring their volunteers on, and over Zoom, we show them how to run Ecamm or how to run the ATEM Mini Pro, how to do the cameras and how to frame the cameras up and how to make it look okay, how to add graphics and all of that most people kind of, they feel intimidated by. But one of the great things about PTZ cameras and PTZOptics, especially with the new Move 4K with the auto tracking, is that if you have someone that has just a little bit of affinity for it, they can run everything by themselves. You don't need 5 camera operators. You don't need 4 people running the switcher. You can do just about everything yourself. At our church, we have a 3 camera setup and a pro presenter coming in. So it's basically 4 sources that they have to deal with. And all 3 of those cameras are PTZ cameras. And we have one person that's doing that and the sound. And at the same time, they're running the lyrics up on the screen. So it's very doable with just a little bit of learning curve. You just have to have someone that's willing and passionate. And I think the main thing is if they see it as a ministry rather than an obligation, they'll be more passionate about it, because it is. They are basically being the church to a lot of people that to this point have never darkened the church doors. So
no, that's that. I was going to lead into a question about the pandemic and if you saw an uptick in this, but we're going to say panda because I don't know how to. Greg, that's your department for the for the pronunciations of the usernames.
Yeah, pretty much that's calmed down. I was taken off the air so many times during it, and I wasn't being I wasn't even talking about the pandemic. I was just talking in general, and we were doing online ministry, and next thing I know, my stream's taken down. I think we're beyond that now, hopefully.
But it goes into this.
It did change our world.
But it goes into this question that Panda in the chat room has. She says, we do have problems, but that's because a lot of our congregation is older. The younger folks are working with the kids, so our tech team is 2 people. So is that kind of what you ran into, Ryan, like during the pandemic and even coming out of the pandemic now that you have congregations like this that are struggling because I don't want, because my grandmother's 84, I think she's going to be 85, smart as a whip when it comes to technology, iPads, computers. Not all elderly are like that, but
Right.
do you find that is and what tips would you have, say, for our viewer Panda in the chat room?
I do find that, and this is kind of my pet peeve, and it goes back way before the pandemic. My wife and I, we've ministered in large settings, large congregations, hundreds of people. We've been in that setting, but since starting a church, it's completely different. And we started noticing after starting a church where there's nobody there to help, we would go to music conferences or training conferences, and we felt like everyone there, of course, the trainer that they're bringing in to speak is going to be somebody at a big church with 500 people or 1,000 people. And they come in and they're giving tips and tricks that only apply in a big church setting. How to use your talkback mic, effectively. And it's like, we don't have anyone to talk to in our talk, and so we noticed that in the music world. And then still today, there's some great YouTube channels out there. I can't, name them off the top of my head is a little hard, but like there's Churchfront, there's a few others that are doing really great training, but a lot of times they're offering solutions to people that are on the higher end of the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we found, there's 380,000 give or take churches in the United States. The average attendance on Sunday is about 65. So you have the larger churches, but you have a lot of churches that are struggling to find people that not only are willing, but have a little bit of technical expertise to come in and do this. And so there is a real need for that. There is a lot of people that are struggling, and they have, they're trying to find someone that's willing. And, a lot of times it is someone that's elderly or someone that's not, a teenager. And the great thing is that if someone is willing, technology is getting so easy. PTZOptics has made it so easy to program things, to get them looking professional, that once you have it set up, you can teach someone to run a very high quality live stream with a very small learning curve. There's always going to be a learning curve. Most of the time, the learning curve is having to get over the intimidation of doing this and being responsible for something that's public. Worried about doing something wrong. There's a big fear there that people have to get over. But really, once you get over that little hump, anyone can run a joystick controller, especially like PTZOptics. They're not the Super Joy, but the regular, the fourth generation, I think. It's so easy to hit camera 1 and then hit a preset button. That's one of the things. I think Marshall and Bird Dog, they use the same PTZ joystick controller, and to call a preset, it's like 3 or 4 button pushes to get it to come back to a preset. With the PTZOptics, it's camera 1, number, and you're there. And when people see how easy that is, I think a lot of times the light bulb just goes off, and they're like, "Oh, I can do this." And so what I tell like people that are trying to recruit volunteers is to first address the fear. It's not going to be hard. Once you see how it works and once you see how easy it is, give it 1 service, 2 services, and it's going to be old hat to you. So
I think the other thing you have to do when you are recruiting, and that is allow your leadership to be inspiring and encouraging and show value in the ministry. And secondly, give freedom for failure. Because people in technical ministry, many times coming in, they see what you're doing, or they watch productions on YouTube or television, and they go, well, there's no way I could ever do that. Well, you do not have to do that.
Right.
And I tell them straight, Ryan, you can't do that. But what you can do is be the best that God has created you to be. Here, you have freedom to fail. Okay, so there's a malfunction. It's not your fault. Okay, and you
Exactly.
give that freedom, and then the next thing you know, these people respond to that. They respond, they dig in because they want to avoid the failures or the problems, or the stream didn't fire, or the server was wrong, the camera's white balance was all whacked out, whatever. And they begin to learn and grow and then take ownership of that ministry. And that's where you move to that next level where people are involved, whether they're older or younger.
I think
You have
that's
a question up there, Stephen?
yeah. I'll pull that up, but I think that's the biggest problem. I think we have an elderly lady that she'll write everything down in a notebook. That's the way she feels comfortable. We've spoken about this before, but you know what? She can get everything working. She can get everything
Mhm.
running, and she's even teaching some of the little kids to run this. So yeah, I'm in agreement with all that. We had a question that came up here: HDMI or SDI ATEM? I think he's saying is which one is better? That's what he wants to know from Jean. Jean, I guess that's how you. Come on, Greg, help me out with that one.
Jean Lee,
Jean Lee.
not
Uh,
related to Kim Jong Un. Different, different. Jean Lee.
My opinion here, when you're asking which is best, it just depends on what you need. The big difference for me between the SDI and the HDMI version of the ATEM is the outputs. So the SDI version of the Pro has I think 2 outputs, and the Extreme has 4. Whereas if you have the HDMI version, your Pro only has 1 output, and the Extreme only has 2. So if you're wanting to do some extra things, like send video to an overflow room, if you're using the HDMI version, you have to have at least the Extreme. Whereas if you're using the SDI version, you have more flexibility with outputs. The flip side of that is with the SDI version, you're probably looking at some converters somewhere, for your monitors or whatever. When it comes to SDI versus HDMI, I get this all the time because the legacy knowledge there is that SDI is better for longer runs. HDMI, after 30 feet or so, it goes bad, but they have fiber optic HDMI cables now that are one directional. We use them all the time, and they will carry like a 4K signal for 100 meters and be perfectly fine with no signal degradation. So the length these days, if you're using the fiber optic HDMI, the length is not an issue. So it really comes back to what kind of functionality do you want to use. Do you want to have the locking cable? If someone's tripping over your HDMI
Exactly.
cables, do you want that lock? And do you want the extra outputs? And if you do you have the converters or the monitors that will work with SDI? It's really just a kind of a preference thing there. It's I don't think either one is better or worse. It just depends on what you want to do with it.
I think back in the day, I think we all could agree that SDI was the
Yeah.
king because of long runs and the locking. I'm personally a fan of the SDI because of the locking mechanism. You run into places where, if you don't have, and I always I hate to bring this up, but you always have the elderly folk with the walkers or the canes, and you don't want them tripping over, cabling. So, and if it
Yeah.
happens, I mean, Greg does it all the time. I mean, every time he walks into the sanctuary, oh, I'm sorry, he's still paying attention. But no,
Well,
it's
it
serious.
seems to me like you're talking about Tom Willis here. He says, I'm 73, been doing the live stream for years, but I'm a nerd.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Hey,
He's been around. Well, but Tom's one of the minorities I think that watch this. There's a lot of guys that are scared. Ryan, you said this earlier. Like that initial scare factor. They see like a big switching board, or they see, they see a lot of equipment, and they just freak out. They're like,
yeah.
there's no way I can run it. We run.
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Well, I'm just going to interject here. This is where maybe wisdom would come in. So if a church is calling Ryan's company, or they call me, I've got enough sense to know I'm not going to overkill them. This is not
Right.
rocket science.
Right.
I have a responsibility to not, if a smaller, easier to use simple layout is going to work and grow you into the next phases of ministry, well, I'm not going to put you into something that's going to just overwhelm your mind and have
Right.
people walk into the studio or the sound booth and look at it and say, thanks, Pastor, I'm gone.
Right.
No, you want it to be as simple as possible and still have that good production value that you want.
Well,
You want people, remember, this is about ministry. This is about church. This is about changing people's lives. This is not about creating stress. And churches are full of volunteers and people who use that as their service and ministry toward God. I want those that are serving to have wins. Maybe
Yeah.
a small win this Sunday, a big win the following Sunday, but I want them to come out after service and go, Pastor, we nailed it. And you talking about getting mojo going then and momentum going then. If you create an atmosphere or an environment of failure from the get-go because this streamer or this company says, well, you need this and that, you're already done. Buy, equip what is necessary with a little bit of growth room and grow into it, and you'll have a great team. I promise you this works.
dovetailing that with this question, I would love to use the A10 Mini, but they don't do NDI. The ease of NDI makes using OBS worth it. But again, we go back to the simplicity factor. And Ryan, I'm not going to speak for you, but I think a lot of what you're doing with the A10 is for that simplicity factor because everybody knows how to use an HDMI cable, right? There's no learning curve where you can start getting into NDI. You have to kind of have some sense of know-how when it comes to networking and processing that data on a network. And if it's already overloaded that network, well, you run into some problems. You can always output the ATEM to an NDI using capture cards to get that as an NDI source. But why don't you follow that up as well?
No, you're exactly right. And that's, we have some people that want NDI. And here's one thing that I've noticed, because Greg was hitting the nail on the head, is that if you're just getting started, and a lot of churches are, or if you've been using the iPhone or one camera and you want to kind of upgrade, you don't have to go out and spend $55,000 and get a production van, with a 20 channel mixer or switcher and all of that. Because you're just going to overwhelm your volunteers that are learning this. However, what happens is you give someone a simple system where they can produce a quality live stream in simplicity. When they catch the passion of that and they learn and they begin to develop in that area, they will be the ones pushing for more bells and whistles because they'll understand it then. And you don't have to drown them in bells and whistles to overwhelm them in the beginning. When it comes to NDI, it's an amazing development, but I have seen that churches they'll want NDI because it's one cable run, right? But they're using a $50 switch, network switch that's it's gigabit, but it just doesn't have the capability to pull in 3 NDI streams when everybody in the single congregation is on the Wi-Fi, and you have it just. I've seen it create a lot of more confusion. And unless you have someone there that knows networking, that can go in and make sure everything is right, it can lead to a lot more issues than it solves. If someone's there that knows how to do stuff, it's great. But what I have found is that hardwiring in with the HDMI into an ATEM Mini Pro, or even when they're using like OBS or vMix or Ecamm, bringing in that hardwired connection, it makes things a lot more stable, and it's not there's not as many points of failure as someone that's just getting started. It makes things a lot simpler, a lot more stable. And so if you know NDI, you can run it. I say it's great. It's an amazing technology. If not, and you don't have the network infrastructure or an IT person on staff or in your congregation, it's probably a better choice, at least in the beginning, to hardwire in either SDI or HDMI.
Yeah, I think that, to honestly answer that, I mean, I love NDI. My whole studio is wired NDI. We do it at the church. But again, like you just said, I'm at the church. I know how to do it. Greg, I know you guys use NDI as well, but you have you and Chris that are there, so somebody knows what they're doing with it. And that just adds on to the complexity of things that can go wrong. I still have my SDI cables running here in my studio as a
Yeah.
backup in case, what if, right? If something happens from the network standpoint. So keeping something simple with a simple switcher, plugging it in, whether it's software, hardware, is always something that's recommended. I think one guy in
And
here is using a smartphone.
before you go to that, just to tag off that for 1 second, you know, biblically speaking, it should always be Paul's and Timothy's. So I look for people that I can build a relationship with that know more than I know. And it may be in the church, it may be out of the church. So you guys that are out there, I highly recommend that you hunt. It may be someone from your local school. It may be someone in your church that's just not ministering but has background in this. For example, what I'm saying, my entire studio here is NDI, and probably it would have been right before I went to Ukraine the last time. I was having some issues, and I'm working through it and couldn't fix it. And I pretty much know what I'm doing, pretty much, and I couldn't figure it out. I called Stephen, I've got an issue. 30 seconds later, the answer was done. It was a network switch issue, and his level of knowledge. So in that broadcast arena, I would consider him a Paul and I'm a Timothy. So I recommend, pray that the Lord would bring somebody into your life, somebody into your ministry, or hunt for them online, build a friendship, join a Facebook group. A guy that there's some good groups out there. We've had guests on here with John Mahoney. He's got a great group. Jeff and High Def, PTZOptics has all their stuff. Stream Geeks, they're out there. So find and build some relationships. Those will be golden when you really need some help.
Yeah, I agree with that. Get in these groups, ask around. Knowledge is free, and a lot of these guys, especially when it comes to ministry, a lot of these
It
guys,
is their ministry.
It is, and I myself am in some of these groups, and if I don't see anybody responding, or I think if somebody's responding in a way, and Ryan, I don't know if you feel this way when you see some of these threads that are going where somebody's taken them on a long roundabout way of getting to the solution, and you're just like, this cable, this capture card solves the problem, done.
Right.
Call it a day. That's when I get involved because, I'm not going to step on anybody's toes when it comes to that. I've learned that over in the past. You're not helping anybody if they're not asking for your help. So I
Throw
tend
up that Center First Methodist comment. That nails it.
All right, I'll pull that up here.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and read that, sir.
It says, I'm a preacher and certainly no expert, but I love NDI. It's so simple and easy to use with only one hard wire. Center First Methodist. Thank you, sir, for that comment. Yeah, it's
one of those things where I think that it's at your comfort level. Ryan was talking about that. Some people prefer to just have hardline ways of doing things. Like for the longest time when NDI first came out, I was like, there's no way I'm using this in production. I mean, when it first came out, I was scared to death of it because, you're always taught hardwire's the best way to do it, right? In the old broadcasting ways. SDI, HDMI, that's the way you got to do it. And then when they're telling you it's going to be over Ethernet and you're thinking, oh, it's going to be compressed, it's going to look like garbage. These are thoughts that are going through your head. It took a while for me to totally adopt it. And then when I went all NDI, I was like, straight NDI. But
Right.
it took years of doing that. And I think I always say to people, every piece of gear is a tool in your toolbox, right? I use different tools for different applications. Even have you guys heard of the YOLO box? That little Android?
Yeah.
Okay. Even something that simple, I use that for certain applications because it's simple, right?
Yeah.
I don't need to bring out the vMix box. I don't need to bring out the TriCaster. I just need something simple to add a little overlay with a camera and call it a day. That's what I don't want to get into this big battle, NDI versus HDMI versus SDI, because it really comes down to preference, comes down to infrastructure. And I know there's plenty of churches out there that are the old 1800s style, Greg, and you know what I'm talking about, those thick walls that you can't even
Beautiful
shoot a cannon
buildings.
through. Right. You have to
Difficult
go.
wire.
you have to go like an NDI solution sometimes because they don't want wires everywhere, and they don't want. Yeah, Ryan, I'm sure you've done installs like that. They don't want, because it's a cathedral to them. Like, it's
right.
immaculate, and I don't blame them. So there are probably times that you do recommend installing the NDI. So you got to really look at the use case, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it also depends on what kind of system that you want to run. Like, do you want to run software, or do you want to run off a hardware switcher? When you're running off a hardware switcher, you're going to have to convert that NDI to something else. And so it really just depends on personal preference. But yeah, if you want simplicity and you have the infrastructure and know-how, NDI is the future. And it's already stable enough to use if you know how to do it. If you don't, hardwire is still super easy.
Since Ryan, you're a guest, Greg, start thinking about this too with this question here.
I love his name. I can wound me, Daniel. Daniel, where are you from, brother? Where?
He's
I also see Holland jumped in here. Greetings to you, sir. Renee Kogelman from Holland.
He says, to have an average church tech team, what gadgets do we need? Is there 3 things off the top of your head that you guys can throw out to them to help him on his quest here to look for that? What would you say, Ryan?
Yeah, so if I'm limited to 3, I want the 8 Mini Pro, I want the PTZOptics Move 4K, and I want the PTZOptics joystick controller.
Okay, fair enough. Greg?
I wouldn't disagree with that. I'm assuming Daniel's talking about streaming. Probably I would go with the same if you had the budget for those 3 units. They're the easiest, the simplest. If you're referring to you have nothing, Daniel, then
yeah, we're assuming they have audio. We're assuming they have audio. I didn't throw that out.
So we're good there then.
And Daniel, if you don't have audio and you need the recommendations, I'll go back and we could ask Greg and Ryan about that. But we're assuming. I'm going to agree with these guys. I think keeping it simple, as much as I love NDI, having something you just plug in, especially, this is something we didn't talk about, but especially those churches that happen inside of hotel rooms and they're in buildings that they rent for that Sunday that they can't stay there. Having something like a hardware ATEM to unplug those HDMI cables, throw it in your bag, you're not permanently running these cables. So having something like that, it's simple, that.
Yeah.
The only other thing, I'll tell you this from spending a lot of time in 38 nations. I would consider even something similar to the YOLO as well as an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Many nations, especially, I was just in Tanzania a few weeks ago, and the 5G and the 4G LTE coverage, it even smokes the coverage I have here in my home in Western Pennsylvania. So they have the bandwidth necessary for streaming via LTE. So, and all in one unit is also an option.
Yeah, that's true. I do like the YOLO box. I have it sitting, actually, I don't know, right there. You can see it. It's flipped on me, so it's right there.
Yep, I see it.
Yeah, I have it. So. I use it sometimes for a monitor sometimes, and I can add graphics to it to go out. But I like the simplicity of it, having it to be able to just throw it on a DSLR or throw it on a camcorder, take it out to the field, add a graphic or two, stream it, record it, whatever, just so, because I'm lazy and I don't want to do post-production. It's a great add-on, and that's why I don't get into debates with OBS versus vMix versus Wirecast.
Right.
Because everyone has their place. I know, Greg, you're the same way. Like, you'll use OBS for gaming, you'll use vMix for streaming. I'm the same way.
Well, I use vMix for serious stuff.
Right. You're using it more for that, and everything has its When he's playing his games, he's not serious. That's for sure. No. But everything's a tool in a toolbox. I think that's, people in the broadcast world You guys got to get in your mind that each one of these items is a tool. If you're a carpenter, you're a broadcaster, you're carrying around a toolbox. These are accessible. I'm even thinking about buying an A10 Mini just to have it as an option, because sometimes you get in positions where you don't want to bring. Like, you guys can't see it, but I got a rack sitting behind me. Greg's seen it. My old TriCaster 460 sitting here in a rack. Capable, I can hook it up to a live view, capable of streaming out 6 cameras over NDI with PTZOptics cameras and PoE. I mean, it's like we roll it in, set it up, boom, we're good to go. Audio, video, everything. It's all encased. I don't want to take that out every time I need to do a little live stream, Ryan. I want something that I could just throw in a backpack, get on a plane, and have the professionalism of a live stream, right?
Right. Which the YOLO box, I think, does tethering as well, but the ATEM will tether to your iPhone. So even if you're out like in
there you go.
We work with like schools and stuff that do athletics, so like a football field, you can tether it to your iPhone, and if you have a good signal, you can live stream straight from there. And I think the YOLO does tethering as well, so makes it really easy.
So John Lee,
yeah, there's a question here from John Lee.
What computer specs do we need to do a good quality of streaming live? Well, I'm going to answer this. I don't want to say more importantly. Well, it probably is. You've got streaming live there on the end of your question. So the first thing I'm going to look at before I even consider my computer or my phone or a third-party device like we've been talking about is my bandwidth. So the first thing I'm going to check is not my computer specs. I'm going to check my internet bandwidth, because if I do not have enough upload speed, it wouldn't matter if we put the newest computer off the shelf. The monster of the world supercomputer from IBM, if we only have a megabyte up, we're going to struggle. So that's the first thing I check.
All right, Ryan, what do you suggest? People come to you, they say, "Hey, build me the supercomputer." What do you say to them? I'm live streaming, man. Tell me, what do I need?
Well, again, I think Greg's got it. It really depends on what you're trying to do. We've live streamed our church using the lowest Mac Mini that you can get using Ecamm. But what we found is that bringing in sources into the Mac, NDI, HDMI, didn't matter. Multiple sources coming in, especially 4K, it struggled, not with encoding, but with handling all those sources. So it get really jittery. So what we did, we still stream with that, by the way, but we ran everything through an A10 Mini Extreme, and it sees one source and it does it fine. That's an entry-level Mac Mini. However, when you're in the PC world with vMix and stuff, it really just depends on what you're trying to do. But here's what I tell people when they come to me and they want a software-based system is you need a good processor. Usually what we do when we build a PC for people is we use like an i7 or an i9, 8-core, 10-core processor, 10 cores better or more. And then we use 32 gigabytes of memory, and we use either the NVIDIA 3070 or 3080 or 4070, because those cards are just beasts. And the better video card you have in a PC, the better. But right now, bang for buck, unless you want to use Windows only software, it's really hard to beat the performance of the new Macs. It's kind of flipped everything where Macs are now cheaper because of that M1, M2 chip. So it's really hard to beat the value for the dollar there. But again, it's just personal preference and what you're trying to do.
That new base level, if anybody's looking into a new Mac, that base level Mac Studio, I just picked it up. It's $2,000. Beast of a machine. It's got the M2, 32 gigs of RAM. I hooked up a NAS box, only I just didn't, from Otherworld Computing, and I just didn't put it as any kind of NAS attachment. I just put 8 terabytes of storage in it, and then I bought a little dock that you can put on the bottom that you can put an M2 drive inside of it. So I have a terabyte and a half.
A couple days ago.
Terabyte and a half.
Nice setup.
I think total 9.5 terabytes of storage on a base level. So out the door, I think it was like $50 for a 2 terabyte SATA drive. I want to say I was close to $2,400.
Yeah.
On that end, and that runs. I mean, I'm running Final Cut Pro, compressor, motion, all at the same time with Adobe Premiere because I have to put this thing to its test, right?
The limitation though with the Macs, especially for people like me that tend to recommend hardwiring over NDI. If you're running with a Mac, you're pretty much adopting NDI because you can't put internal capture cards in a Mac Studio.
Right.
With a PC, you can get like the Blackmagic Decklink quad, which is 4 HDMI 4K 60. And you put those into a PCI slot, and you have a physical capture card as well as NDI. But with Mac, you're pretty much putting yourself on the NDI path. But still, the muscle power of the computer, dollar for dollar, the new M2 chips, M1 chips are hard to beat.
What about Sonnet? Are they making new boxes to use external capture cards for the Macs? The USB, I guess it's USB-C Thunderbolt 4. Are they making boxes so if somebody did, like in my situation, if I wanted to get like a Decklink Quad 2 and throw it in there, I know they used to have them in the when it was Thunderbolt 2. I want to say. I don't even know. I haven't looked at one in a while for like having like an external box, I guess you would say.
There's ways to do like an external chassis with the PCI slots in them.
Yeah.
I don't know of any that currently work with the M1. I don't know of any that don't. I haven't investigated it that much. So that'd be one thing I would check if you have an Apple chip.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's people that with Macs, they've used like the Decklink in an external chassis, but it's usually people that really know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, totally. Because even with the M2, I know certain things are slow to adopt. So it is what it is. But if you're doing editing or you want to run like a software solution, like you said, with NDI, it's definitely worth your upgrade. We're going to actually get one of them for our Pro Presenter machine because you can run 5 4K displays off of it.
Yeah.
And this was all because of the inspiration of the movie.
Let me pull this out because I don't.
Me being a fanatic, I mean, it's.
Oh, this is big. Oh wait a second.
That's
Let me. Oh wow! Check this, guys. What?
Oh,
what is this?
So glorious.
What is this?
So
That
Blaine,
is-
why
that
is
looks
this not
clean.
working?
Oh my god.
All right, we got to do the
Turn
Bobby
off the
Blue.
automatic.
Clean like
That's
a
my-
mother.
that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
given
yeah.
all day,
To
to be
die
honest.
for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's worth.
That's pretty
the
good.
whole video right
I
there.
can
That's worth it
honestly.
right there.
Like,
I can see. I can tell.
I
All right,
can't
so tell
count
us
the
what
times
is
people
this,
are like,
Angel?
"Something's
Besides like
messed
a
up,
really
something's
really
messed up,"
cool
and I'm like,
piece.
did you update
So-
something?
So it's
No,
like
but
a
come to find out,
diorama
the
where you
automatic
can
updates
actually
was
put the
there,
full
and
dock of a,
it can break anything in
OLED
a
switch.
moment's
That was made
notice.
for the OLED switch. The
Yeah,
white
the
one.
stream went down
I had a question.
temporarily.
USB ports accessible.
I think it should be
here.
back
yeah,
now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
If
So
they
yeah,
if they
I had
refresh,
questioned you
should be
a while
back.
I'm
back
looking
what
at you with
OLED
a
you had.
castle.
Oh, that's what you were
No,
asking.
it'll
That's
refresh it.
okay.
So I had to
Super
make
Mario
sure I
Brothers.
put the right base in there.
Yeah, the pre-recorded
And
starts
everything else is
automatically
just
when it
a
Okay.
kicks
diorama
back
that I
up.
did. Like I said, it was
So
inspired
there's
by
there's a prime
TikToker,
example
and he did
with
his
vMix
stuff a little bit separate.
crashing.
Every little piece was glued in. What I
Greg.
did was I created the boxes all
It's
in one.
this new version
Yeah,
of
I'm
vMix.
refreshing, and it's
center
still
boxes,
the castle.
coin boxes
It's
were all
been
one print, and the
yeah. There's a delay.
very
pipes, I
applicable.
made them
There's
a little wider,
there's a delay.
just so that you can add whatever is
Um,
in the other package that you got in there for sure.
All right,
Yeah, I don't know
so there's
why-
another
What
package.
were you
here,
doing
this-
there with
this
Super
one here.
Mario
I'm just going to
Brothers
slide this
on
out of the way
PTZOptics
off to the
channel?
side so people can. Actually, let's
No,
go
it's
this
just
way,
the
'cause then people could
it's
admire
because it's
it
reruns
while
in vMix.
we open
So
this up.
it
I see
switches.
some colors in here. I don't know what it is, but I see
Yeah.
some colors.
So like if you
Okay,
if you
looks like
refresh it,
oh
it should be,
no way!
I'm
Look at
showing it
this.
right
okay,
now.
so we
I'm
got
not
Mario
showing-
and Luigi. I mean that's kind of
no
common
way.
sense.
Put
The
games in there.
Exactly.
No, I'm
Is that what
seeing
that's
it,
for?
guys.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh! And then what? You
Yeah.
put them in here?
I don't know why.
Slide them in there for sure.
Oh, sir!
Yeah,
Look
me
at
too.
this.
YouTube just
Doesn't
had
need
an
a fourth.
error as well.
Oh
That is
my gosh!
brilliant.
Check that out, guys. All right, wait. There's two other things in here. I got to ask with these.
Hang on. they're just seeing like that replay until it comes back up here. Hang on.
Yeah, I'm watching real time.
So it's just going to take a few minutes to get. There we go. Now we're back on. I
Beautiful.
sit here.
Awesome.
So, guys, apparently, on to your point, these guys jinxed it. What was the point that you were getting on? Make sure you don't update your stuff before the stream.
Right.
I
Yes, sir.
I didn't update anything. Windows decided that it was going to restart and try to do an update, and vMix, instead of canceling it, like I have those updates turned off, it still wanted to update. It closed vMix down, and it rebooted the whole system.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So Windows,
Got me
another
nervous. on my
another
video.
reason I hate Windows, but you have to use it type of scenario. That's ridiculous. But
Yeah,
I have had
it happens often where something crazy like that just breaks everything.
Well, I noticed that my TV's connected to vMix, right? Yes, somebody Twitch. So my personal reruns of shows that I do on my own time, right? That popped up in the center. So the guys were like, "Yeah, I keep seeing this," and I don't understand why the stream, it was showing us in vMix, but it was playing that rerun, even though I got rid of the rerun. So I had to close it out and reopen it. vMix was acting kind of funny with that, but that was something that these guys just started talking about it. They literally started talking about, make sure you turn automatic update. You guys might have missed it.
You know what? Was that prophecy?
I don't know, but you all made me nervous with that because I'm sitting here and
thinking that
all of a
was
sudden my
prophecy.
TV went and I'm going, what in the heck?
1 Corinthians 12 got activated, folks. That was prophecy.
You guys get to see it firsthand. Well, it was either that or it's telling us, yeah, no more Mario. I'm sorry. If you want to do that, you have to watch my personal stuff that I do. But we were almost to the end. I was going to wrap it up anyways because we were at the 12 o'clock hour. So maybe it was just trying to throw me off and say, get back to work. But Ryan, it's been great to have you on here. Even though you jinxed it at the end of the show there and started saying,
No,
turn
I
off
did.
your,
It's not
oh,
his
Greg,
fault.
well,
I
you
did.
both did it.
Yeah,
You
he's
both-
the one that was prophesying, not me.
We were co-conspirators. We were co-conspirators.
We got to get you back on
Yes, we'll
in the
get you back.
future.
Sure.
To have, some more talk. I think it was a good show. I think there was a lot of information that people had gotten. If they're interested and they want to know more and maybe they need some help at their church, how can they get in touch with you?
Best way is just go to churchsetup.com. We have live chat there. We've got a phone number you can call. We've got email. They can send any questions to ask at churchsetup.com, and we do everything we can to help people out.
Awesome. Make sure you guys go and check that out. Mr. Greg Terry, who's been through the war and then some.
Ryan, thank you. It was a joy meeting you, sir. And
Yes,
I
sir.
look forward to spending some more time together and see where we roll out. It was a blessing. And hey, where else are you going to go? Get some good, wholesome advice and recommendations. And also, it's like Wild World of Sports. It's the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. We experienced both today.
I need a recommendation or maybe a connection with your security company there, because I think we need to implement them on our side as well.
Yes, I can bring in the entire Ukrainian military.
Oh, look out.
I was
Here we
talking
go.
about your security guy in the back there.
Oh,
That's
Bernard
more my
P.
speed.
Fife.
Yes, that's more
He's
my speed.
always on my shoulder. Let me tell you something. That's one bullet Barney, buddy. One bullet
Exactly.
Barney.
Oh, my
Are
goodness.
you an Andy Griffith Show person?
I am a huge Andy Griffith fan. Yes.
You and I are now best friends.
Yeah. It's my favorite.
Oh, dude. So for the next hour, we're just going to convert to a Mayberry trivia and talk about Barney Fife.
My wife and I just watched Return to Mayberry
Oh, dude.
just the other day. Just
Steven, I knew I liked this guy.
I'm
Now-
telling you, that's why I said we got to have
Yes.
him back on.
Yeah, we'll get you back on.
And I want to get to the root of that as to why, even when you tell Windows not to do anything, it does it anyways. It always seems to do it on a show. I've had it do it on my Thursday night show too, right in the middle of it, just
I saw
crash
that.
everything.
I was watching that stream. Yep.
And I don't know why. vMix used to be able to cancel that out, so I don't know why it decided to do that. Maybe it just doesn't like me. I don't know. It's the first show that we've done since May, so it probably,
Hey,
it is what it is.
I saw a comment come in just as we're going out. ND, those ambient mics will pick up everything in the room, though. That means high loudspeaker and sub bass and more. So it's all about mic position and compression and gating that microphone. You just don't hang the microphone up and turn it on. You have to go through the setup process with compression and gating and position, and it'll work good for you. So last tip.
We actually did a show about audio, and if you go back through the archives, you can check that out. But we'll be back next month. Maybe I can get John Mahoney on next month. We can talk about some automation and things
That
like
would be
that.
awesome.
That we can talk to the church world about automation, because he's all about
Yes, sir.
automation and making your life easier in a house of worship space. So I'll talk to him and see if we can do that. And guys, really appreciate you hanging in even that for that last few minutes there. Make sure at 2:00 today you tune back into this channel for Tess and Paul and the partner live stream that they're going to do, all about PTZOptics cameras and all that good stuff. A lot of good stuff coming down the pipe. We'll see you next month, second Wednesday of the month. Have a great week.